Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in. I am Katie Batesman, the Content Director at SheCanCode, and today we're discussing how to find your voice as a woman in tech. In a male-dominated industry such as tech, it can be hard for women to be confident, assert themselves and find their voice. But to encourage more women into the sector and to close the gender gap, we need female voices to be heard. Now, we're lucky enough today to have Shaan Sood, Head of International Marketing at Sangoma, with us today to talk about self-confidence, finding your voice and speaking up at work. Welcome, Shaan.
Morning, Kaylee. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And yeah, it's a great topic and subject, and I'm really happy to, if I can get any more females into our industry, because we do need them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us to chat about this. As you said, it's an important subject. So we'd love to kick off with a little bit of background about yourself, if that's okay.
Yeah, so although I have been working in marketing itself for numerous years, I actually started life, I am a techie at heart. My degree is maths and computer science. And I've worked in product marketing as well. So, you know, when you get the product guy saying, oh, well, I don't know, you might not understand this. I'm like, no, give it to me.
Perfectly.
Exactly. And I think that's something that's always helped in my career, because when obviously with marketing, you simplify the message. However, if you understand what you're talking about and what you're trying to sell, it's so much easier. You know, it's not fluffy words and stuff. And you can then actually take part in conversations with different groups, and you're not just, marketing, unfortunately, is often seen as just a fluffy stuff. And actually, we're so much more than that. And, I'm not afraid to get it in there and say, no, I'm sorry, the product doesn't do that, and I'm not going to say it does. And I can, have the confidence to know from a technical standpoint that what I'm saying is correct. So as I say, I started my career. I was actually a software analyst for part of the Gartner Group, and then eventually ended up a bit of product marketing, market intelligence, and stuff, and then ended up in full marketing role, mainly in the software industry. And I think it's about 3 years ago I joined Sangoma, who are telecommunications. So it was a bit of a challenge, complete different industry, but because I've got the technical background and I'm happy to learn and always want to learn, I started off as the European marketing manager, and improved myself, and now head of international marketing. Fancy title, but it's great fun. I absolutely love it.
And so you started in a technical background. You said you took computer science. Was there something about that maths and computer science that you really loved when you were young and you were picking?
Yeah, I just love maths. I mean, I'm one of those, my children can't see why, they absolutely hate the subject, but I absolutely loved it. And it's a funny story of how I got into it. It was like, if you divide a number as a fraction, you can do it. But as a decimal, if you divide, you'll end up with a recurring number, like a third is 0.3333. And I was like, wow, that's weird. And this was at the age of 7. And I just sort of took to it from there.
Yeah.
And, computer science is just another language. And it's amazing. These lines of code, you write them, and all of a sudden you get a picture on the screen, or you get, I think one of the things I did was write a mini booking application, as in travel booking software program for my those days, I'm showing my age, was O levels, but which, for anyone younger listening, that's GCSEs. And and since then I've sort of been fascinated with the whole tech industry, of what you can do with just zeros and ones, because that's ultimately what it is.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear that you came in via a very technical route, but you ended up in a marketing role, which is great to hear, because we hear of so many different routes into the industry. and the broad range of roles that are on offer. So it's great to hear that you have the technical experience, but you've been able to move around quite freely, and go into areas that you either want to try or prefer working in. It sounds very flexible as an industry.
It is, and I have to say, hats off to Sangoma, because I joined literally a month before lockdown, and it was like most companies, here's your laptop, use your mobile phone, off you go at home. Whereas one of the things, and I learned on what our products could do by simply having been in lockdown, because we actually enable remote working. That is part of this is what the company was built on.
Yeah.
So they've been doing it for years, and it was like having to use our own products to work was a great learning curve. And
yeah,
it was like
great company to be
like,
at that time.
I know. And I was like, well, I'm not really, I've only been here a few weeks. I'm not sure I want to give my personal number out, because I obviously don't have a work mobile at that point.
Yeah.
I just joined and said, no, you don't need a work mobile, because the whole point is, with our applications, anyone who phones you on mobile, if you've got this app on there, will see your work number, and you can switch it off at 5 o'clock. You stop taking work calls, and it's your personal number.
Perfect.
I thought, oh, how fantastic! So actually, I've never ended up getting a work mobile because I've not needed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's that flexibility this company gives. It's even before, I would guess, even if lockdown hadn't happened, they have the trust that you do your job and you do it. They're not gonna. I haven't got a manager who clock watches.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll end up having to take calls at 7 p.m. But then again, I might say, well, I've got to take my children somewhere, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not checked up on.
Yeah.
And I think I've had that through most of my career, fortunately. There's been the odd job which has been very, oh, hang on, where were you at your desk at 2 p.m., And I've got to be honest, I didn't work for that company for long, and I think that's where you need that strength to say, I know what I'm doing, I'm trustworthy, I do my job, and it works both ways.
And the pandemic has helped with that quite a bit, hasn't it, to
Yes.
help with that trust. But you're right, there are still those companies that need to know exactly where you are.
Yeah.
And what you're doing, and you're right, it's something that you don't stick around long, because if you think you don't trust me, then you're not gonna get the most out of me. Tech is still a male-dominated field. How can women find their voice? I mean, you mentioned that you have a technical background. If you do speak up about something, you have that technical knowledge. But what about somebody that doesn't? How can women find their voice?
Well, it depends, because it depends on what role you're doing within an organization. You have to know the industry. So no, you may not have to get under the hood and know how a product works and stuff, but you do need to know ultimately what it does. What's the strengths of that solution? Why is a company selling it? So in that way, you can quite easily be successful in sales and marketing without a technical background, but you have to spend the time and want to know why. And I think, to be fair, whether it's male or female, you have to ask the question why. If you're not interested in the solutions any company has, with tech or otherwise, then don't work there. Because one of the questions I did ask someone when I was interviewing them for a role, when I worked in product marketing, was, if you could earn the same money that you would be earning here at McDonald's. I mean, it's a bad example, but and it's like any job where you don't, it's the same day in, day out, you are serving people. Would you do it? And the ones who said, well, we even considered it for a split second, I knew they weren't right.
Yeah.
Because that's not why you get into tech. or into this industry, it's because you're interested in it. So if
Yes.
you've got that underlying interest, no, you don't have to code. No, you don't have to be a techie, but you've got to be interested.
Yeah, and your day is
Um,
very different in tech, isn't it? As somebody that worked at McDonald's when I was a student.
yes, so did I,
Okay.
which is why I use that example.
and loved it. And you know that they have certain days where you do certain things, and as you say, you serve people every day. But I remember I used to have this sport on a Wednesday. It would be a menu board cleaning
Yeah.
day. And I'd have to get up on a little step ladder and clean those menu boards. And every Wednesday I think, oh, it's the same thing every week. And you're
Yeah,
absolutely right. It's in that mindset of every day is different, and you want a career where every day can be different and
exactly.
very fast paced and changes quite often. And you're right, just asking somebody
Yeah,
what they would like to achieve in their day is very different to wanting that job in McDonald's, which works for a lot of people, but it is
absolutely.
very
Not
different
knocking it.
mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, one of these days I might think I've had enough of the high pace and every single thing changing, and I might just want an easy life. But, that's the whole point of tech is it innovates daily. The people behind it, you've got entrepreneurs coming up, you've got startups. We are forever changing. Just look at a mobile phone, what it can do now compared to what they first came out, and TVs, everything is being developed. And if you want to work in an industry that innovates and is changing, then, get into tech. But I would also say, do not be afraid and don't be scared because, oh, I've got no idea how that works. You don't actually necessarily need to know how it works.
Mm.
You need to know what it does and what its strengths are, and also what its weaknesses are. So that way, if you know what it can do, you can stand there confidently and talk to someone.
Yeah.
We all joke about with mobile phones is, oh God, we need a teenager to tell us how to use half the features on it. I pretty much say it's the same in tech. You have to be that teenager. You've got to be confident to know what everything does. It's like, we have phones. We've had a new range of phones come out recently, and I've had to literally sit there with a phone for a day, playing with it and making sure I know how it works and what every button does. Not that I need to use every button, and not that I'll ever talk about it, but if on the off chance someone says, "Well, hang on a minute, but can you not do this or do that?" and you're like, "Actually, yes, we can." Um, but at the same time, be confident enough if someone does get too technical on you, say, actually, that's not my area of expertise. However, I'm quite happy to, get your conversation with our sales engineer or product manager or whoever, and be confident to say, that's not me, but I will find someone who can answer that.
Yeah, just
Because,
knowing you don't have to know everything. You just need to know
no,
your job.
yeah, know your job backwards. Don't worry about knowing everyone else's job because, that's what they're there for, to back you up.
Yeah.
We're a team, and always, I think if you work for a company that will support you in that, you know, with whether it's internships or extra training and help, and if you ever find yourself you're working for someone who's like, well, why don't you know that? You should know that by now. Look to move on, or
Yes.
stand up for yourself and say, well, hang on a minute, you haven't given me the training, and I am willing to learn, but I'm not expected to know it off the back.
Mm.
Um,
And
and
that type of communication, is that just about verbal communication, or is that body language, eye contact? And I suppose that's very different now on Zoom than in person.
it is, which is why, although we are completely flexi working, our CEO has asked that we look to come back in the office for at least 3 days a week. It doesn't have to be full time. You don't have to be there for but just for a few hours, you come in, and it is that body language. It's, you can't work without it. Because I work alongside our VP of sales. We obviously look at strategy for international, what we're doing, what's coming up. And, you know, yes, we do the video calls quite frequently. And yes, you can see body language, and yes, you can see the person. But we've both said it's just something different when we're sat in a room together. You know, we just thrive. I don't know why we could come up with better ideas. I don't know, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to work remotely, but we just get a better vibe. And, human beings like to be, we are still herd animals, and it is still nice to be with other people.
Yeah.
But again, I think tech gives that flexibility. If you're the sort of person who would actually prefer to work alone and remotely, then that's enabled. And I think that's the biggest thing that will help females is, you can get that work-life balance. You will get that flexibility now, whereas
Yeah.
before it would have been difficult to, I've got to leave the office for an hour, I've got to go and get the kids, I've got to do this. And they wouldn't have been able to, whereas now, I do it myself sometimes. It's like, actually, no, I need to be home because my daughter does athletics. I've got to take her there. And everyone knows on a Tuesday between 4:30 and 5, I'm usually unavailable, and it's not an issue. I don't even think about it. It's just part of my daily routine. I think once we get that, then you're going to get more females into, let's face it, unfortunately, it is still the female who is the main carer. Rightly or wrongly, that's society. And I think that's a much bigger conversation than we've got time for today. But yeah. But
I
it's
was
where
going
we're
to
at.
ask the biggest challenge as a woman in a male-dominated field, and I suppose that ties into that, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
being sometimes being the caregiver at home, and as you say, now that things have changed a little bit, it's having that extra flexibility. But I suppose, how do they still overcome these types of challenges?
I think it is willing to be flexible yourself. And, to be honest, we also want to be the main carers quite often. It's not that we have to be. It is, I think, on biologically, females and males are different. We are naturally more nurturing because that's just our makeup. So, you have to be also like not want to change that. I don't think we should. And it's when it's, can you have it all? It's also, do you want it all? I mean, I only took on the role of head of international because I knew it would fit with where I'm at and where my kids are at, and it suits me. It may not suit you, and you have to, it's one of those where don't thrive to be the CEO if it's not right for you. If you're going to be a CEO, you've also got to be prepared, as flexible as any job is, you are still going to be doing 60, 80 hours a week, because that's what it is. And if, whether you're male or female, if you're not prepared to do that, then don't go for it. But at the same time, don't say it's not fair, because that is, that is the role of a C-level. Anyone at a C-level is that you do have to give up your personal life. And I don't think every female is necessarily as prepared to do that. We are getting more because they are. And that's not to do with, men not being available for their families or stuff. That is to do with you as an individual. And I've got to be honest, at one point in my career, I did think I wanted to, get to the absolute top and stuff. And then as life carried on, and I think also, with lockdown, other stuff, I thought, actually, no, I'm happy at this level. I love what I do. As long as I love what I do, then that's enough, because I do want the time to go and watch track races or, sit in the cold outside watching something, or even just sit and watch TV.
Yeah.
and
Just have some
I don't want to be on a
downtime.
plane. Yeah.
Mm.
Early in my career, I was flying like weekly into Europe or monthly for meetings, but at that time, it suited me. Was I don't want to do it now.
Mm.
I guess you do progress, but it is be careful what you wish for in a way. Because yes, tech will be a. I don't think tech's as anti-female as we would say. I think females choose not to do it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I
I
mean,
think they
yeah,
hear the wrong things as well, don't they, about an
yeah,
industry and think maybe that's not for me.
yeah, exactly. And it's like our head of IT is female. Our head of a couple of product areas are females. So I don't think I have actually found in Sangoma, as I have in other companies I've worked for, the lack of female leaders. I actually think we do pretty well. Um, and I've always felt as a company, they just take the best. It doesn't matter, your gender or race or anything else. It is, can you do the job? Are you a good fit for this company?
Mm.
And and that's all that matters. I've worked for a couple of companies like that. I've worked for a couple that haven't been like that. you know I have I worked for IBM, and to be fair, IBM were very good at diversity and female roles. When I was there, we're talking about 20 odd years ago, but they were the first major tech company to have a female on I'm trying to say, on the board. She was on the board. She was basically head of a division of IBM, which might not sound much now, but going back then, it was absolutely amazing. You know,
Yeah. And
so
they're
you
really good
do
at
get it.
retaining staff, aren't they, at
Yeah,
IBM? I remember
yeah,
thinking that people had been there sort of 40 years and they
yes,
were having to make sure that people didn't just flat out retire because
no,
people were dying after they retired. So they had this kind of ramp off program
yeah,
at IBM because people were there so many years because they said it is a great company to be at, and they really did do try to
absolutely.
retain staff.
Yeah, no, great. And the more tech companies that do that, the better. And it is that instance you've got to look after your staff. If you look after them, they should hopefully look after you as a company, you
Mm.
know, um, and be willing to go the extra yard. As I say, I couldn't actually tell you how many hours a week I do, because it's just get the job done.
Yeah.
You've got a deadline, meet the deadline. Sometimes, if because we're a Canadian company, if we need to do calls for time difference, I can take a call at 8 o'clock at night. It doesn't bother me. It's fine. At the same time, you know, on occasion, I might need to do a 6 a.m. call with Australia. Again, if it was every single day, then that would be my choice if that's the hours I want to work, but it's not. And I think that's, if there's one word I would leave for is flexibility on both sides.
Yeah.
Um,
And a lot of our listeners, they're first and second jobbers. So how do
yeah,
you find that confidence when you're relatively new? And you spoke a little bit before about the importance of being in the office and knowing people's body language. And I've always thought if I were new to the industry now and
mm,
I was working remotely, I don't know how I would find that confidence if I didn't get to meet people regularly. And thankfully I had many years of building up my confidence being around people before I ended up working at a company where we're mostly remote.
exactly.
How do they do that?
Yeah, it's tricky. And I think you have to try and make that time to meet people,
Yeah.
even if it's just a coffee, or you can decide, if you can't necessarily meet your work colleagues, go and work from a hub somewhere, just so there's other people around. And I think, socialize more. And it's getting that confidence to be able to speak up in any setting, not just work. You have to build it up, and hopefully wherever you are working, there is someone who will nurture you and look out for you. It's like when we've got the youngsters, it doesn't matter what, as a female, to be fair, it doesn't matter what department you're working in. If there's someone new, just look out for them.
Yeah.
And this is nothing against my male colleagues. Just as a female, they wouldn't think to do that. As a female to a female, you need your confidence boosting, you need that self-esteem, and just help them out. Just have a chat over coffee and, oh, how's it going? Yeah, everything okay? That's all you need to say sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to ask you a little bit about female leaders and encouraging more women into leadership roles. I suppose that ties into what you just said about, making sure that you help other people in your organization as well to feel like they have the confidence to, even as you said, just a coffee with somebody within your organization if they want to talk about a possible role that they want to go for.
Yeah.
Even just, chatting through with them about what that would look like and whether or not they think they have the confidence to go for it and the skills to go for it. And as you mentioned earlier, like making that choice and whether it's right for them and their circumstances. But so as you said, it's making time, isn't it, to encourage your other colleagues, which
Exactly.
as you said, if we're not in the office, we probably just don't find the time to do that as often as we did.
No, but to be fair, I've got, people working in Latin America, Asia and stuff, and it is setting up a call, whether it's bi-weekly, monthly, putting at that time, half an hour in the diary, just to chat. Not necessarily work, because obviously you are going to talk to some extent, but, house stuff, oh yeah, what do you do over the weekend? Get to know them as a person, so you've got something to talk about. And then, when you do meet in person, you've already got a bit of knowledge about that person, and you can ask them, oh, so, how was that when you went to wherever you went? And, oh, I know you were on holiday in Vegas or whatever, and you can chat to them. And I think it is that, I think in our positions, we have a responsibility to the next generation coming through to guide them, to help them, and to try and get more females in an equal footing, so they've got the confidence. That's what it's about. It's just having that confidence. It takes a while. Some people are naturally confident, absolutely fine, but others aren't. And it is our role to get the best out of those people. I think the environment of where you work helps. We, here, if something goes wrong, no one is blamed immediately. It is, right, let's sort the situation out first. If something's happened, let's just get that resolved. We fix that. Then let's review how it happened, and then look at how it's not going to happen again. And that's it. There's within, obviously, if we've never had anything that's serious happen, but you cannot have repercussions on an individual unless it was gross misconduct, which is a completely separate topic. But people make mistakes, and what we mustn't do is come down on them for it, because a mistake has happened. What's the point of having a go and blaming them and knocking their confidence? Because we all make mistakes, we're all human. And then what you've got to do is get them to understand, actually, if I've done something wrong, I can now go to Shaan and say, oh no, help, what do I do? To have that, I'm not going to get blamed and in trouble for doing it. To be honest, it's a little bit like looking after kids. And I think from a personal level, I am a different manager since having a family for that very reason. You are more tolerant, but it is having that time.
And
you've got to
being
make the
mindful
time.
of their confidence, as you say, and knocking their confidence, because I wanted to talk to you a little bit about tricky situations. I suppose if you don't have that confidence in the first place, how can you then go on to deal with those tricky conversations that you need to have? You know, whether that
Exactly.
be discrimination or at the minute, a lot of people in the news, you know, they're having to approach their employers about pay rises. And
Yeah.
if you're not sure, if you don't have that confidence in the first place, how do you approach those types of situations?
That's hard because confidence takes time. You've got to feel happy in your role, happy in what you're doing, and I think it builds daily. The more you do something, the better you'll get at it, and the more confident you'll feel talking about it. Um, and I would say prepare. Preparation is a huge thing. Write down everything, and you know we say, look in the mirror, do your presentation to yourself. And I'm sure, like everyone, I've stood there and thought, okay, what am I going to say? I haven't got a clue. I haven't got a clue. Oh, even now, I still get the butterflies if I have to present in front of a room full of people. Even though I'm 100% confident in what I'm going to say, I know my stuff, I've done my research, you know, I've prepared, my slides are correct. There is no issue. And I think it's just getting over that first 5 seconds of, oh, hello everyone. And
Yes,
then,
that's the first
you know,
line, isn't
and
it?
that's it, as long as you can get through that. Um, and I always feel that I talk too fast, and which is a one thing. It's like you try and rush to get through it. Um, I still do that now, and I've been in, my career for years. So it's just also understand that doesn't matter who you are, you will always have nerves.
Yeah.
And actually, nerves are a good thing because it stops you being overconfident as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned there
Um,
you've been in your career for years now, and you've learned a lot. What do you think is the most important lesson you've learned during your career?
that you will always be learning. You never know it all, and if you think you do know it all, then you're probably going to get bored. So to me, it's like each day I'm looking for something new to learn and develop. But that's me as a person. Um, and yeah, and also self-belief. I've worked hard, I've studied, I've got my qualifications, I know what I'm doing. And it's to have that self-belief that actually what I've done is right, you know. Um, and I think that's the biggest thing. But also sometimes you will have an off day. Just like the other day, I was trying to write a data sheet. An email going out. I just couldn't get it. I wrote it about 4 times, and in the end, I sort of passed it on to a colleague and said, "I'm struggling.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sound good." And within 2 minutes, he just spotted a few things. I said, "Oh, what about this?" And I said, "Thank you. That's it." So don't be afraid to know that you might not always get it right. You're going to have an off day. We all have an off day, and it's okay to have an off day. It's like anything. Take a breather, take a step back. If you can, come back to it. Sometimes you can't because you're on a deadline, and then go and talk to someone else or phone
Yeah.
someone else and say, help. Don't be afraid to ask for
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
That's the one thing as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we're almost out of time, but I want to ask you one last
Yes,
question. Do
sure.
you have any advice for other women working in a male-dominated team?
Believe in yourself, and do stand your ground. Don't be that female who's pushed to the background. And I'd say the one thing is, if you're in a meeting and you find a person just talks to the male and not yourself, which I do find, and it's actually your field and your expertise, um, one would hope that the male involved would actually then refer it to you. But if they don't, I mean, to be fair, my colleagues will say, that's not me, that's Shani, but I talked to her. But if they don't do that, don't be afraid to stand your ground and say, yes, whoever you're talking to. I can answer that one. That's my, that's my bag.
Yeah.
So be confident enough to stand your ground and not get railroaded out. I think that's one word, is try and believe you're there for the right, you're there because you deserve to be there.
Yeah.
Not because you're female.
Yes, exactly. That is lovely, positive advice to end it on. We are already out of time. Thank you so much, Shaan, for taking the time
Not a
to chat
problem.
with me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And to everybody listening, as always, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again next time.